And we've really designed three important pieces of infrastructure in this state. And we realized that we really needed to be partners with government, each branch of government at the state level. So let's just talk about the first one briefly, and that is the Office of the Attorney General. Some people would say, well, why would you partner with your regulator? Because the Office of the Attorney General is responsible. They have a charitable trust section. They're responsible for watching over us. Well, we realized that if we didn't be proactive and have a counsel that could meet with the Office of the Attorney General on a regular basis, that we might fall prey to regulatory activity that would not be mean-spirited, but which would be really uninformed. So the good news is, by having this nonprofit counsel to the Office of the Attorney General, and it's, the Attorney General was very receptive to the idea and said, this is not a bad idea for us to do this. At that time, it was Governor Granholm, and she did, quickly say, and you do realize that I can still do whatever I want as the Attorney General. And we said, of course, Attorney General Granholm. But Attorney General Caucus really bought into the idea, and of course, Attorney General Schuette has continued it on. So the first part of our infrastructure was having a counsel to the Office of the Attorney General. And the good news about it is we've been able to do some things together which individually we couldn't have accomplished. So we have a website which is, it's all about operating legally and making sure nonprofits know how to operate and follow both the federal and the state laws. And it's a very simple tool, but they can give it a lot more visibility because of their state presence than we could if M&A or CMF were doing it alone. The second thing is, as we all know, giving is really, while foundations are important and corporations are important, individual giving is the mainstay of charitable giving in the U.S. And so we need to make sure that we're helpful to the individual givers. So together, CMF, M&A, and the Office of the Attorney General promote giving wisely every holiday season. So that's been the first piece, is how do we really have a positive relationship with our regulators, and they can still come out and say, we really aren't going to agree with you on this. And there have been some bills where they've said, we're not going to be able to support the nonprofit sector on this by virtue of our other responsibilities. The second thing we realized we really needed to do was we needed to work closer with the executive branch of government. And so Michigan created, and it was really modeled after a pilot that was done when Dennis Archer was mayor of Detroit. And we really created the Office of the Foundation Liaison. And it's unique in the country. It's the only gubernatorial office like this in the 50 states. There are a number of mayors who now have picked up on it and who have similar offices. And it's been a very important activity. And you can imagine the first year it was in place, and Governor Granholm welcomed it with open arms, but the first year it was in place, we had to spend most of our time explaining that we were not a fundraising arm for the governor, that was not the deal, for the Office of Foundation Liaison. But we were very fortunate to find an individual who had both government experience, state government experience in the state Office of Management and Budget, which was very important, as well as foundation experience. So Karen Algergeson, who's been leading that office, had just the perfect blend of experience for us. And it's turned into a very positive activity for both the foundation community and the government. The important point I'll just make there is that M&A is at the table because the office has an advisory committee, and Kyle Caldwell, the president of the Michigan Nonprofit Association, is on that advisory committee. So when we meet with the governor quarterly, he's always there with us. So while it's called the Office of the Foundation Liaison, we're very much concerned about the whole nonprofit sector. And then the third piece of infrastructure, which is, I believe there are now 2 states in the country that have this, and that is a nonprofit caucus to the legislature. One of the challenges in Michigan is we have term limits. There are 22 states that have term limits. And as you know, it's a revolving door. No sooner do you think you've got an educator, legislator educated, familiar with how foundations work, then they're gone and you start over again. And it can be a challenge when one of your members calls up and informs you that, I just want you to know, Rob, my pool boy just got elected to the State House, and he's 22. And I said, great, have you filled him in on the work of your foundation? Oh, never talked to him about philanthropy before, you know. So part of the challenge is, how do we really help these new legislators learn fast about the nonprofit sector? And there are two things we did. One was we realized it had to be bipartisan, bicameral, and we needed to make it inclusive. And Michigan is a big state to cover. So the nonprofit caucus is actually co-chaired by 4 members of the Senate and 4 members of the House. So we have 8 leaders. Getting the 8 of them together is a challenge at times, but the good news is they have embraced the idea of supporting a nonprofit agenda. The agenda is shaped by them, it's their agenda, but CMF and M&A inform it. The key thing we did, and this is what I've told others that we learned in Michigan the hard way, and really term limits was the wake-up call. And that was, we realized that these people have very short memories, they have very short time frames. They're only there 6 years in the State House. And so they come in, and if they don't have a good grounding quickly, and one that they can relate to, you're in trouble. So one of the first things we did, and we now do this every other year, was we did an economic analysis of the impact, economic analysis, of the nonprofit sector. This was the first time in my history in Michigan that we'd ever done this. And we now update it every year. And the neat thing is we were able to show these legislators that the nonprofit sector in Michigan employs 1 of every 10 Michiganders. And that was a big wake up. That was like, oh, we didn't know people worked for nonprofits. Yes, people work for nonprofits. We're not all volunteers. People work for nonprofits. And a lot of jobs, in fact, the largest employer in the state of Michigan is a nonprofit. So being able to tell the economic story was really critical and helped give us the credibility we needed in forming the nonprofit caucus and having it as an ongoing policy-making group for us with the legislature. So those are kind of the 3 linchpins. We put the nonprofit council to the Office of the Attorney General in place first, followed up with the Office of the Foundation Liaison to the governor, and then the 3rd piece was the nonprofit caucus with the legislature.